Stowe Great War Aerodrome during World War I played a crucial role in the air defence for London and South East. It's a historic site that's constantly changing, being cared for and enjoyed, hopefully for many years to come. These buildings were originally only meant to be temporary buildings. They were just built to survive the war. After the war, the buildings were left absolutely derelict. They're really weathered. They were at once used as farm buildings. So for us trying to preserve them and bring them back to how they used to be is quite a challenge.
Historic England has been helping Stowe Maris in the past few years with grant aid to protect these buildings, make them watertight and keep them in good shape for future generations to enjoy. In this project, we are looking at the conservation of traditional steel windows. Historic steel windows frames belong to a specific era in architectural development. They greatly contribute to the significance of the buildings in which they are found, and so it's very important to repair them rather than replacing those windows so that we can keep intact the historic environment and the significance of those buildings. So here at Stowe Maris there are more than 100 original steel windows. Their conditions vary, and we wanted to understand whether or not it's possible to repair them and conserve them. For this reason, we approached specialist contractors to design a trial to help us understanding what could be done.
So Dorothy Restorations are an architectural metalwork conservation company, and our primary role is to conserve and to an extent restore historic architectural ironwork. Initially we were asked to look at what the options were for conserving the windows at the Stowe Maris Aerodrome and then carrying out a trial to see what processes, methods would be practical. There are a lot of these windows, so whatever we develop now has to be practical but sustainable and ultimately economic. For the sample, it was decided that we should restore them, so not completely get rid of all the historic evidence, but they were falling apart. So if they were going to ever be used as windows again, they needed to be functional. They did need to be able to hold glass and be relatively watertight and windtight, but equally we shouldn't go so far as to make them look brand new. Well, the first challenge we had once we got to site was we had to work out how to actually remove these windows. We think they'd been built in as the building had been constructed, which meant that we weren't going to get these out without cutting something. The decision was made on site that it was easier and less problematic to cut the window in a couple of places to enable it to spring inwards a little bit so as we could then safely get to the fixings and then remove the window. We knew we could repair the metalwork. So that was the collaborative decision that was taken with Historic England after we'd sort of worked through various other options. So one of the other challenges we faced near the beginning of the project was getting out the historic glass. We knew at the outset it was going to be very difficult to get the glass out in one piece because it was put in originally by Lindsay Doyle Putty, which over a very long time had gone incredibly hard, almost like cement. We tried everything from gently heating to putting poultices on it to chemicals just to try and soften the putty to get it out. Ultimately they all failed and we ended up going back to the old method, which was just a lot of scraping and very carefully and a lot of time until gradually we managed to ease out pretty much all the panes. These windows were very deteriorated. The water had sat on them for a long time and it had significantly rusted. So what we had to do was work out what the material of the window was, work out what we can replace it with. And then we had to take moulds. We took moulds of the original shapes, did sketches of it, and we made up wooden patterns to replicate exactly the section sizes that were missing and that needed replacing. Those then went to a foundry to be cast, and then when they came back, we had the exact shape ready to be fitted back in, and we fitted it back in exactly the same as it was constructed before. Some of the glazing bars had been bent out of shape, so those were just heated locally and straightened. Some of the joints had broken off, so again in those areas they were remade. Biggest issue we had with sort of on the minor work side of it was with the hinges. A lot of them had seized, so that was a very labour-intensive process of heating and cooling and allowing the rust to fall out of it to a point where we could actually get them working again. We ended up using a low-pressure, light abrasive clean on them, so enough to take the rust off but to leave the protection which is naturally formed on the material on there, but good enough to allow the paint to adhere to it. So it's that balance again that you have to strike. Once that had been cleaned, it was painted, finish coated, and that will go back onto site, and once that's installed, anything that needs touching up on site will be touched up by hand. So we didn't go down the route of restoring these windows back to perfect condition for several reasons. The first one is in the historic context it's going back into, it just wouldn't look right. It wouldn't look right to have nice, shiny, brand new, perfect windows going back in. The second one is the deterioration up to a point is the history of it. It's the heritage context which it needs to be set in. And it's those things that we balance.
The windows are finished, they're returned to Stowe Mary's Great Oare Aerodrome. We've got one test piece actually in our buildings, which means we can observe it structurally and we can also see how it looks cosmetically. And our second window is in storage that we can use for taking measurements and drawings from for our future plans. We are over the moon with the success of this project. We've managed to do it at a lower cost when we've also ensured the future of the windows and the buildings. We've learnt so much from this project, and the two windows are just a stepping stone in what we hope we can achieve.
We hope that this trial will let people understand that metal windows can be preserved and looked after. This is not only good for the environment, but it's also cost effective and will preserve the significance of historic buildings where those windows are installed. When dealing with conservation projects like this, there are many important things to consider. First of all, it's very important to get the right advice from conservation accredited professionals. Secondly, it's very important to start a project with a thorough condition survey and appraisal. And it's also very important to look at options for repair and conservation so that informed decisions can be made. At the same time, trials are very important because they can help us understand the buildings and the best way to repair them. If you have a project like this, please get in touch with Historic England. We are here to help you.